right, good afternoon. It's 1:30, and Krista, we do have a quorum? Okay, thank you. I guess we can, we got a few short bills to take up. I'm going to start off, we'll call up Senate Bill 2269 and recognize Senator Boyd to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 2269 is the Trauma-Informed Approaches Bill in the K-12 schools. And this is a bill that actually, I believe, the House passed last year. We did not take it up. We've changed it, and we've worked this year with our school counselors. We've worked with various different teacher groups across the state and the Department of Education, and working with this to see what we could do here. We know that we are under. We know what is going on in mental health, and mental health doesn't just happen as a silo at the Department of Mental Health. It also happens in our schools. With 95% of our youth going to our Mississippi public schools, we also need to make sure that we have a strong component of mental health and behavioral health in our schools. And so as a result of this and the pandemic, we know that there are heightened levels of trauma. We know that there are heightened levels of professional and mental health issues that are happening within our school. Statistically, studies are already being done that show that this is the case. So what we're proposing here is using this bill. What we hope this legislation would do is we would make sure that teacher students learn about trauma-informed approaches in their undergraduate studies as part of their classroom management. We would have counselors use trauma-informed approaches in providing responsive services to students. The counselors or administrators will be able to create trauma teams in their school composed of relevant school officials to help identify and serve students experiencing trauma. And the counselors can provide 1 hour of training to their educators in their school districts. And very carefully with this, we want to make sure this training is not adding anything to the classroom teacher. This would be just training to inform them, to let them know what's going on, and that they will make so that they can more aptly refer students to the counselors within their district. So this is not asking teachers to become do additional counseling. This is just to help them identify and make those referrals. The school districts will report the information about the number and placement of school counselors in each school, and the school districts will develop a trauma plan for districts using the templates that are provided by the Department of Mental Health and the Department of Education. And the Department of Mental Health has been very helpful also in working with us on this, and has sent a strong letter of support. Wendy Bailey has supporting this type of legislation. So that's a very brief rundown and outline of the bill, and I can go into more depth as you have questions, so I'll entertain questions at this point.
Anybody have any questions for Senator Boyd? Senator Hobson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Boyd, I assume you intended to have this take effect upon passage, or it's what it says, as opposed to a July 1st start date?
Yes, Senator Hobson. The reason for that is that we had it take effect upon passage so that school districts could go ahead and start working for the next year to make sure those things are in place, so they could get to work immediately upon passage instead of just July 1.
Okay, well, if we pass it, even though it's effective July 1, they could start working on it. My concern is that you may have a lot of school districts trying to shuffle around during this school year and create a program without a lot of lead time, and you may have a haphazard kind of loosey-goosey approach to it. So I would tend to think this should be a July 1st start date so they have time to read it, review it, get it going, if that's what's to be done. Just my thinking on it.
I'm open to an amendment on that, so that is.
Okay, and I thought maybe the reason was because I know we're in a pandemic now, and if there's some things that need to be done, but I also can see it being difficult trying to get this all coordinated immediately. A couple other questions.
Okay.
One is, as it relates to the, look on line 46, as funds and qualified personnel become available, it should be the goal of each public school district. That's not I'm assuming, if I'm reading it correctly, that's not a mandate for schools to have it, but that's their the hope that they would have enough counselors available for the students they've got, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what the current law is about number of counselors per students?
There's not a current law. Pete, do you want to? Mr. Chairman, can I ask Pete to respond to that?
Sure. Pete, if you have a response.
Chairman, I'm not sure what is the student per counselor ratio, but I certainly can get that information for you.
Okay. But I think the intent of it is that counselors will be trained in this trauma-informed. It's not really, I mean, you know, I get it because I'm familiar with school districts like you are, that there's, you know, it could be a funding issue, and they have a lot of money committed. And I'll hear it all the time, you know, well, it's an unfunded mandate y'all put on us. Y'all put another unfunded mandate on us. Is there a way that we can just work within the current system and just, and have them go through the trauma program?
Well, and I think that's what we've tried to do in this piece of legislation. I'm glad you brought that up, is the Department of Mental Health, and actually working with the Department of Education, has templates available to work with the school districts on this. So, and we have some school districts in the state that are already doing these types of programs and things like that. So the Department of Mental Health has actually reached out very much and said that they will work with us and work with the school districts to make sure that these teams are in place. The hope is when this plan's put in place and the templates are there for the school districts to fill in, that this will make it much easier for teachers as they see and spot issues that they think are problematic on behavioral and mental health, that they'll be able just to make a quick referral to the counselor, and the counselors then will be able to appropriately manage that issue.
Okay. Along those lines, has this been reconciled with the School Safety Act that we passed a couple years ago?
My understanding is that it is reconciled with that.
Okay. I know I was on that committee, and we dealt with a lot of the same issues about making sure we've got people that are trained to recognize problems. I would say, and I'm thinking, not to be fair, I don't know that it was always trauma-induced problems, but we wanted to recognize those that had behavioral health or mental health issues. And so I think I want to be careful, because I don't want this scattershot approach. And I think that, and I know that committee worked really hard over many months to come up with a program that dealt with some of the same stuff, and so I'm scared that we're going to be going off in two different directions
We
here.
didn't feel like we were going two directions, and we worked with the that's why we worked so closely with the school counselors on this, is to make sure that we weren't duplicating, and working with the school counselors to make sure that this was needed legislation. I mean, you know, is this needed legislation? It was introduced, is this needed legislation? And the school counselors were very much on board, believing that this is needed legislation at this point.
Okay, and do you think they were aware of the School Safety Act that we passed?
I believe, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. With those things in mind, I'd like to offer two amendments, Mr. Chairman, if I may. First would be to change the effective date, July 1, 2021, for the reasons that I've stated. I think it'll be difficult to try to put something in place immediately, and may create more frustration with school districts if they got to do this immediately without having some prep time and lead time on it.
Does anybody have, you heard the motion, anybody have any questions for Senator Hobson? July 1st, take effect of July 1st. Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Does anybody have questions for Senator Hobson before we get to your substitute? All right, Senator McMahon.
I'm concerned about all of the undue pressures on the school, on public school systems, you know, because of COVID and the gyrations, and some students are studying at home, some are at school, and I'm concerned about there being some mandates on this, and I would like to offer a substitute amendment that this would be enforced July 1st of 2022, which would allow a year for the school systems to prepare for this. That's my amendment.
I appreciate the amendment. However, I think we're going to stick with Senator Hobson's amendment. 2021 is the appropriate one. So we're going to, Senator Boyd, do you have any questions for Senator Hobson?
No question for Senator Hobson. I would also say too, one of the reasons for this bill, particularly to be brought up now, as opposed to like waiting, is that there is a great deal of trauma. We know this, the literature is holding this out, and if you talk to any school counselor, COVID has brought issues that we have never seen in our schools before. And so this is why we wanted to go ahead and get something in place during this legislative session.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I think if procedurally, so that we do this right, if Senator McMahon was recognized, I would speak against his, I think his substitute motion does take precedent over mine. And I would just say, I think that in the event and with the understanding of the information that Senator Boyd has provided, that if we're gonna pass this, that we ought to go ahead and do it. I think it can be done by, with prep work by July 1. So I would speak against the 2022 motion offered by Senator McMahon.
All right.
And urge you to vote no on his motion.
All right, we're going to vote on the substitute amendment by Senator McMahon. Anybody have any questions for Senator McMahon? All right. All in favor of the substitute amendment? Say
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
The noes have it.
Back, I'll
on the
re-urge
original amendment.
I'll re-urge my original motion of July 1, 2021.
Any questions for Senator Hobson on the amendment? Senator Jordan?
Senator Hoskin, excuse me, with all maladjustments we have now due to COVID-19, you think this can be done? And I question why so many, every 250 students?
Well,
Is that what the bill, what this?
if I may,
I know that's not
I'm
your
about to
amendment.
come, that was part of my second amendment. So I think we're still, right now, we're on the amendment of the effective date. Now, I understand your question, and I was going to offer another motion regarding that issue
Yes, sir.
in a
Okay.
moment. But
All right.
if you're
Carry
okay
on.
with,
I just know with what we're dealing with now is quite a bit of frustration out there and maladjustments, and which is not our fault, but that school districts are going through. And I don't think we should be too hasty to push this through right now. I'm finished. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for Senator Hobson? Senator Hill?
Yes, if you look at, line 29, the underlying section, it talks about,
Senator Hill, can you get have a microphone? Thank you.
on line 29, where it begins talking about trauma-informed practices as recommended by the Federal Department of Health and Human Services, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. My question would be, if we pass this bill, we're basically agreeing to do what is recommended by Federal Department of HHS and Mental Health Services Administration in our Mississippi schools without even knowing what the recommendations are. Am I correct?
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
We're on the amendment right at this point in time,
Oh,
Senator.
I'm sorry.
That's my point of order. Thank
I
you.
withdraw my question.
Okay. You can ask your question later.
Yeah,
I
that's
just-
fine.
If we could vote on Senator Hobson's amendment, making this bill effective July 1st. Any other questions on this? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the amendment carries. Senator Hobson?
well, I think in light of the questions that have been asked by the two senators, I may wait. I do think I still want to offer the other motion. If it's okay with the chair, I'd like to wait until after we've vetted some of these questions, because it may have some influence on the motion that I'm going to offer.
That's fine, Senator
Thank
Hobson.
you, thank you.
So,
So we're back on the bill. Senator Hill, you got a question for Senator
yes,
Boyd?
thank you, and I apologize, I got ahead of Senator Hobson. Where it talks about that Mississippi would adopt trauma-informed practices as recommended by the Federal Department of HHS, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, but yet we don't know what their recommendations are. We don't have those in front of us. They may not be developed yet. We have a transition in administration right now, so I'm very leery about adopting something in Mississippi that I haven't seen before. And so that would be my question, is that not a fair assessment to say that we would be adopting something that we don't know what it is or we've never seen?
This bill is adopted, it's very similar to Kentucky language that was adopted last year in Kentucky, using trauma-informed approaches, and trauma-informed language really is a term of art almost that is being used right now. It has to do with behavioral and mental health. It has to do with those particular issues. If we would like to tighten that language down, that is something we would be amenable to, that we can define it further on this if we need to.
In light of the questioning, Senator Boyd, would you prefer that we lay this on the table subject to call?
Well, I'd
or-
like to offer an amendment to that, if I could, just the trauma language.
I think Senator Norwood had a question.
Yeah.
You want to, Senator Norwood, you recognize for your question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's on the bill itself?
Yes.
Okay. My concern, looking at line 123, where it says school districts may, is there any, and over a little bit further, I think it was said that shall, and I was just trying to see if there was any objection to changing may to shall, because especially going in after this pandemic, we have, school districts are facing great challenges with mental illness with the students, and this would be more forceful in terms of them formulating those collaborations to work with Department of Health and other community health organizations to provide the services. This is not an expense to the school district, it's just a matter of them formulating those collaboratives because many of the children are already eligible for the services. It's just the district just need to get with mental health and make sure that that the child receive those services. So my concern, would there be any objections of changing it from may to shall?
Senator Boyd?
Senator, I understand your question. However, let me explain why the may is there. We may have some school districts within our state that already employ all these people and may not need to seek out other additional professionals. And so the may is there so that if they have all of those professionals already on staff, they don't have to employ them. The may is there for school districts that don't have these professionals on staff. And so that is what the may there is for instead of a shall. Because we do have some districts in the state that do employ a number of these professionals already and probably could handle everything in-house.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Wiggins?
Thank you. We're on the bill, correct, Mr.? Okay. Question for Senator Boyd. Senator Boyd, and I may have missed it, the reason we're bringing this bill forward is why?
The reason we're bringing this bill forward is looking at the pandemic, looking at the trauma issues that have been greatly exacerbated and brought on. This gives school counselors an opportunity to work on developing these trauma plans that do, and back to your question and Senator Hobson's question, what's the difference in the school safety? One of the things too, as I'm sitting here, this has to do with the behavioral, emotional, and mental health, and it's really all aspects and signs of trauma. Our School Safety Act really, you looked at a lot of information in regards to school shootings, what precipitated those type of behaviors in that school safety plan. This goes further.
Okay. Are you familiar with what's called ACEs?
I am not.
Adverse Childhood Experiences?
I am familiar with that.
Okay. ACEs and the childhood trauma that children are experiencing, and where's this manifesting itself, or where is it being seen?
Well, and that's what our school counselors are, in meeting with them, these things are being seen. Those that are back at school right now, they're being seen at school. We do have a number of districts, though, that are not fully in school. And so we know that we're going to see a number of these things as kids go back to school.
And would it be fair to say that identifying and treating these as early as possible is the best course of action to prevent later on issues?
Absolutely, Senator Wiggins. And that's why it was important that we go ahead and we do this session, is so that we are prepared and that our school counselors are prepared and that they are working with teachers to help them understand the signs and the symptoms that are there and get that plan in place.
Is it not a fact that children who exhibited a high incidence of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, are disproportionate or are proportionately, in response to that, ending up in juvenile detention and criminal justice centers?
Absolutely, and we know that those children too have more academic issues as well. So all of those things are true. Yes, sir.
So, and the counselors are in favor of this.
Absolutely.
And the role of the counselors at a public school district, as well as, I guess, through your bill, a charter school district, would be to what? Or is what? I'm sorry.
Well, and they are the primary person in the school district, in these schools, that is going to be managing and the behavioral and mental health and getting these children to the right places. That is their primary role, is to counsel these children, or, if when appropriate, to refer them to the appropriate services.
And as much as we would love it, and as much as we would hope, are the parents of children in every instance addressing these matters?
No, sir. And
If they were, would we need this piece of legislation?
we possibly would not need this piece of legislation, but no, sir. But we still, I don't know that every parent, it's impossible to say that every parent would be focused on that, and sometimes we all want to see the best in our children, but sometimes it manifests itself at school, and this is where these counselors are there and can provide the appropriate supports.
And last question, if these are identified, then can a proper, for lack of a better term, plan be put in place, and the child can thrive and be educated at the highest possible level?
Absolutely, and you see counselors doing this all across our state in those schools that do have these systems in place. And those children are thriving and they're achieving much better academically, but absolutely, we see this across the state when it's done well and done right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wiggins. Any further questions? Senator Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I pulled the school safety program, and because I do remember, again, I was on the committee, and we had a lot of discussion about mental health and helping students that are dealing with situations, and the language, what we set up, and this is where I'd like to see some information, because it was part of a pilot program, and it was an evidence-based curriculum to help students in elementary school deal with stress and anxiety in order for them to be better equipped to handle challenges in a healthy way and build resiliency. So I think it's important that we look at that information, because that was passed in, 2000 and, when did we do that, 2019? So 2 years ago, and I'd like to see how it is and make sure there may be some things we could put in this bill that help it out, that things they've seen in the pilot programs at those, I think it was 6 schools that 6 school districts, 3 pilot programs. Anyway, I would think the intent here is good. What I would like to do, if it meets with the chair's desire, is lay it on the table subject to call of the chair, and I think I'd like to see that. I'd like to look at as to Senator Jordan's issue, I think the workload of the counselors and all that, and having something here about the goal ought to be looked at and talked about. And then I think there was one other issue that Senator Hill brought up I thought was a good point too, is do we have, if that's going to be the the agency plan that we look at, we need to know what that plan is, because we may not, we may want to tweak that plan too, or may want to change it. So in light of all those things, I would ask for it to be laid on the table subject to call of the chair.
Any questions for, you heard the motion, any questions for Senator Hobson? Senator Jordan, did you have any questions?
One question about so many councils, teachers, counselors as well.
Senator, do you have any questions? You heard the motion, we're going to.
Yeah, well, nothing concerning that motion.
Okay. Senator Boyd, do you want to have any response to Senator Hobson?
No, I'm open to that, so.
All right, you hear the motion, all in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
No? All right. The motion shall pass. We'll lay this on the table subject to call. We will meet next week, so we can, Senator Boyd, if you want to, it's a good bill, has very good intentions. We can just tighten it up just a little bit, and I think we'll be all right. Okay. Let's take the next bill up on the agenda. Senate Bill, 2305, and I'll recognize Senator Blunt to explain it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 2305 is part of the Senate's response to the teacher shortage in the state. Of course, you know of the two bills that we've already passed, which we think will help with the teacher shortage in the state. Number one is the pay raise, and number two is the reciprocity issue, which we passed last week. This is the third part of that, and that is to help teachers with college loans. In the last 10 years, it's more expensive to go to college, and the real take-home pay of the teacher is less. And you know, that's a large part of the reason why we have a teacher shortage in the state. I would commend to any of you who are interested in this subject, there's a real good report that was being written at the same time that the Lieutenant Governor's office and I were working on this bill. It's called Nothing in the Pipes, Educator Crisis in Mississippi. It's excellent and deals with the teacher shortage that we have and the declining number of graduates in teaching programs in the state. So as part of our response, we have the bill that's before us now, which deals with teacher loan repayment. Over the years, this legislature has passed more than a dozen programs, all of them well-intended, to help people enter the teaching profession. All of them but one are loan forgiveness programs. One of them is a loan repayment program. The bill before you would consolidate all of those programs into a single loan repayment program. And I want to explain what the difference is between a loan repayment program and a loan forgiveness program. The loan forgiveness programs, and again, that's mostly what we have on the books, a young person while in school takes out a loan under a promise that he or she will then go and become a teacher. And if they fulfill that commitment, their loan is forgiven. Many times, however, plans change. Life changes. That person may decide to enter another profession. That person may get married and move to another state. And as a result, the state then is in a position of becoming a collections agency and having to chase that person down to get to pay back the loan that they received while they were still a student. And so we have a recidivism rate which varies in these various programs. I say it varies. The most important point I want to make about all these programs, and again, they're all well-intended, is none of them are being funded. Most of them have not been funded since 2016, and some of them have never been funded since they were put on the books. And so what we're attempting to do here is to convert to a loan repayment program, and here's the way that would work. We make an obligation to a teacher, and we say, you come teach in a Mississippi public school, and at the end of the year, you come give us a letter from your school district that says you taught in that school. And the state of Mississippi will write a check to your loan provider for an amount of money, and I'll get to that in a minute, to pay down the balance on your college loan. The delinquency rate in a program like that is 0. If you fulfill your commitment, you show the state that you've done what you said you were going to do, the state writes a check, and the balance you owe on your college loans will go down by the amount of that check. So we're going to transition to a loan repayment program, and we think because we have a simplified offering, we're going to have one consistent offering instead of a myriad of programs, and we can show that program will have a 0% default rate, that we can appropriate money to that program. And the bill is double referred to Senator Hobson's committee, and I'll talk about the money in a little bit. But what we will do is repeal the programs you'll see. Let's see if where's my bill here. You'll see beginning in Section 2, these existing programs are repealed. And the committee sub, excuse me, let me get the right copy here. But we repeal the existing programs. There has been for many years, teacher loan program named after former Governor William Winter. So that is, the idea of naming something after Governor Winter is not a new idea. That's been on the books for a long time. What we're just renaming this program the William Winter and Jack Reed program. Many of you know, respected Tupelo businessman Jack Reed was appointed by Governor Winter to the first state board of education, and for many years they co-chaired Mississippi Partners in Education, and we thought that was a good idea. So what we'll have in the bill is a single loan repayment program that is simple, that we believe can be funded, that will have a 0% recidivism rate. The dollar amounts in here, frankly, are subject to change based on the scrutiny of the Appropriations Committee, but the concept is that if you go teach in any school, any public school in the state of Mississippi, we'll make a 3-year commitment to you to pay down the balance on your loan. And every school district in the state will be eligible. If you go to a critical needs shortage district, the bill envisions that you will get a little bit more money to pay down your loan. Again, these are, I'll be honest and say, these are really placeholder amounts depending on the appropriations process. But the structure that we've set up is a 3-year program where each year the amount of money that will go to pay off your college loan will be a little bit more to encourage you to enter the profession and stay in the profession in a Mississippi public school. If you move from one public school district to another, you can retain your eligibility for the program. Whether you move from a critical needs district to a non-critical needs district or vice versa, you would still be eligible based on the district where you work. At the end of the year, you present documentation that you taught, and the state's going to write a check to pay down your college loan. That's an explanation of the committee sub, Mr. President. I'm happy to yield for any questions.
Senator Hill.
One thing that I did not hear mentioned in the explanation of the bill, it says it repeals section 37-106-79, the alternate route teacher certification program. My question is, why would we repeal the alternate route certification program when that gets people in the classroom quicker than any other program that you can go through, and many are very highly qualified in their subject area when they go alternate route?
We are not repealing the alternate route whereby a person can become a teacher from alternate route. What we are repealing is the critical needs alternate route teacher, the loan program that they were eligible for, which again has not been funded in 6 years. So that process whereby a person can become a teacher through alternate route, we're not touching that, and that's still available. But the loan program, which is on the books, and again has not been funded in 6 years, which provides for forgivable loans, is one of the many loan programs which are currently not being funded, which would be collapsed into this program. And the reason for that is, quite frankly, again, this is all going to be subject to appropriations, but I think the demand for this program through the traditional route is going to be more than we can fund. So the idea is to create a simplified program and try to fund it. And I don't think that we won't know exactly how many people are going to enter, but we're not going to be able to fund everybody who's eligible for the programs we've got, and it's just a question of simplifying it. Does that help?
Well, kind of. If I might follow up, the short title must be wrong because it says it repeals the section that creates the teacher education alternate route certification program. I'm just going by what it reads. So my question for you is, if it does not do that, why does the title say it does? And my other question is, with how you're consolidating these loans, and I see some merit to what you're doing in consolidating these loans, but would somebody go an alternate route now not be able to get any forgivable loans?
To your first question, I think if you look at section 2, the only thing that we're repealing is I said section 2, I meant section 6, excuse me. The only thing we're repealing is their eligibility for a loan program that has no money in it. In answer to your second question, yes, you're right. We are not, I don't think we'll be able to fund everybody who is eligible for this new program in an amount of money that will make any real difference. And so we thought, for the sake of simplicity, that we're going to have this money has to be significant enough to make a difference to attract and retain people into the profession. We could fund it. We could fund every single one of these programs at $100 a pop, and it wouldn't move the needle on anything. I will confirm with you, but I am certain that we're not repealing the alternate route process for someone who wants to be a teacher. We're just repealing the loan program, and the reason we're repealing the loan program is to have one program that we can fund in an amount that will make a difference.
I was looking at the original bill, where it says it repeals the code which creates teacher education alternate route certification program. And the committee sub references repealing the same code section, so there's got to be a mistake either in the short title of the original bill. I've not had time to look up this code to see what it actually says, but,
well, Senator Hill, we have not done that, but if we have done that, I'll co-author your amendment to put it back, because I'm not trying to mess with the alternate route program.
But we are saying that they can no longer get funded through alternate route, like they can now, if we pass
Well,
this.
there is a program on the books that creates a loan forgiveness program for alternate route. You're right, but we haven't put any money in it in 6 years. So they're eligible for something that nobody's getting.
Well, my son-in-law got it, and it's been less than 6 years. He's a coach, and he teaches at Richland, and he got money for the alternate route 3 years ago.
Well, the information I've been provided by the Office of Student Financial Aid says there's been no awards for the critical needs. Maybe he's not in a critical needs area, but we'll get you your information.
Taught at Terry first, and then he taught at Richland, so he wasn't going to critical needs, and he did get some forgivable loan for alternate route.
Okay. Any other questions on the committee sub? I'm happy to answer them.
Senator Polk had a question. Senator Blunt. Senator Polk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oh, thank you, Senator. Several times in your explanation, you referenced we developed. Who are we, or who is we? Who are we talking about here that we developed it? Who was that?
Well, I guess I don't remember exactly what I said, but usually when I use we, I mean we, the legislature, passed all these different programs over at different times over the years to create these loan forgiveness and programs in the state, and there are about a dozen of them, and I have a list of them here. So we, the legislature, passed these bills, and whoever the governor was at the time signed it.
So you were not specifically saying this particular bill has been developed by we?
Oh, I'm sorry. I have been working with the Lieutenant Governor's office and the Office of Student Financial Aid to develop this bill.
Any other questions? Senator Delano?
First of all, I want to say thank you for these efforts. I know there's been a lot of confusion about whether these programs that we are repealing have actually worked or not, and whether the money was going to be available. So I think you are addressing a significant need by reducing some of that uncertainty. Now, the second thing, do you have a fiscal note on what this would cost?
The difficulty with the fiscal note for the bill that's before you is, and I was up front with you that these amounts are going to be subject to change, is we have two different categories. We have 3 year loan repayments for a teacher who is in a critical needs district, and we have a 3-year phase-in for a teacher who is in a non-critical needs district, and we have no way of knowing whether we get 1,000 people all going to critical needs districts, or we get 1,000 people all going to non-critical needs district, and that will affect the amount. But to guess, if you had 900 people, 900 teachers, and every single one of them went to a non-critical needs district, the first year cost would be $2.2 million.
Okay.
The breakdown of how that would work out, critical needs versus non-critical needs is, again, the amount of the first-year award in here is subject to change based on the appropriations process. I do feel like we need to have an emphasis on critical needs districts, but how much that is and what the difference is between the two, I don't, that's.
So,
that's to be
Senator,
determined.
when do you expect these amounts to be changed? Do you expect it to be changed during the conference report
That's
if it
kind of
gets
where I
that
think,
far?
that's kind of where I think it would end up, because we've got to look at the budget Senator Hobson and his committee and the counterpart in the House got to look at the budget. So whatever they think they can do for FY21 for this program, we then got to back it out and break, try to make a best guess on how many people would be critical needs districts, how many people would be non-critical needs districts, and then do the math and come up with a number. But the point I want to make is this: if the amount of money is picayune, then it's not going to move the needle to address the problem. The reason, none of these programs are being funded, and I hope through the appropriations process, and we've identified some sources of money, but again, that's not up to me, but it's got, the point of this is to get people into the profession. And to get people to choose this while they're a junior in college or a senior in college, and they're trying to think about whether they want to be a teacher or not. We have to make a commitment to them that draws someone into the profession, and if the amount of money is not significant, it's not going to move the needle.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit in the abstract and help me kind of get to where your thoughts were on this.
Sure.
In just about any profession where you have to go through a protracted amount of education to get a licensure, you always have an attrition rate. There's always a turnover in that first and second year
Right.
of whatever that profession is, and that's normal. But I understand we're trying to keep teachers into these school districts, but what were the discussions and/or the logic of not trying what you're trying to do here to any of the PERS tie-ins where they become vested within the state system so that they will, so that we can keep them there longer, not just to get this, but also to start picking up on the benefits that they would have by staying into the PERS system since they're vested. So that's an 8-year process, is that correct?
Currently, yes.
So I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond, but I'm just going to try to clarify that a little bit more. So wouldn't it seem more logical that you would not necessarily offer these paybacks in the first and second year, but skip those first and second years and say, hey, if you get to the third year, you stick it out, you get through that third year, then there's going to be a benefit for you. Because you know that the first couple of years of any job is always something that's going to be there. I don't know if we have to really incentivize. If there's not going to be someone who's going to be a good teacher, we need to let that system work. But I would think that you'd get more value out of this if you started it in year 2 or year 3 and then have it roll back into the first year of their so that it ends at the first year of their vestiture and PERS. Was there any discussion on that?
There was not, and I don't think I agree with that, and let me tell you why. First, this doesn't do anything to PERS. But, if you heard in the Appropriations Committee, I think Senator DeBar talked about this in Appropriations and when we were dealing with the pay raise bill last week. We were talking about this just yesterday about where teachers in Mississippi are in regard to the southeastern average. And what he said was, if you are a teacher who have been in the profession for 25 or 30 or 35 years, your pay is roughly competitive. Correct me if I'm wrong, is roughly competitive with other states. Where we are really failing is the teacher in the first year, second year, third year. That's where the gap is the widest. And look, we all need to think long term, but when you're graduating from college and you've got more debt than anybody's ever had, you've got to worry about the first year and the second year and the third year and paying off that debt, and a way to pay off that debt, because you're paying interest on that debt. And so we have, I think this has got to be front-loaded. They've got to have the benefit now. They've got the college loans to repay now. And if they stay in the profession, and the best thing that we have for our teachers staying in the profession is the PERS system, but if they stay in the profession, you know, they're going to catch up relative to their counterparts in other states. Where we're behind is those first few years where you're young and you've got college debt and you're thinking about starting a family. So that's why we pushed it forward for immediate impact. So,
Thank you, Senator. I
that's
appreciate it.
That's just a judgment call, but that's my judgment.
Senator Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Blunt, thank you. You've discussed this with me before. We haven't gotten into the details too much of it, but if I were a student that was planning on going into the education profession, and I am capable of paying my way through college, whether it's through family or my own means, what would there be any deterrent for that person, or any reason for that person not to go ahead and get a loan? If I knew I wanted to go into education, even though I could afford to pay for college, go ahead and get a loan because I know it's going to get paid off at the end. Is that just the
I would say
luck
that
of the draw?
I would say the deterrent is that you would be relying on the Mississippi legislature to fully fund the programs that are on the books, and our record in that is poor. There are going to be people who are eligible for this program that may not receive it because we're not going to be able to fund. You can come up with it, let me know. But I mean, I think we're going to have people who are eligible, who are not going to receive it. Now, you and I have, well, I've talked to, I don't know if you and I have talked about it, but I've talked to Mr. Stanford about we need to get ahead year one. But I mean, if you're a college, you don't, people out there who depend on these college financial aid programs that we have, or even if we pass this bill exactly as it is before you now, what's next year's legislature going to do in appropriating money for these programs? For college student financial aid or these programs? You can't rely on anything. We come in here every year and you know, we fund what we can, but if it was my child, and this is not the case, but if we could just write a check for the full cost of college and she didn't have to worry about student loans, first, she's going to have to know that every single student who qualifies to teach is going to be accepted into this program. And I don't think you can rely on that because there are going to be more people who are eligible than we're able to fund. And then what happens the year after that and the year after that, you know, who knows? We have had these programs on the books for years and years and hadn't put any money into them. So now we could fund them all this year in big amounts, but you just can't predict what may happen up here. Is that?
Well, I think you could turn that argument around the other way too, to say that because you can't predict, you could flip it either way. I mean, I get what you're saying, but
Well, I'm sorry, I don't mean to
no,
interrupt you.
go ahead.
I don't mean to chase this rabbit, but since you brought it up, one real problem with the way we do college student financial aid is we fund it for the college year that begins in August, that you get a bill for as a parent prior to August at the end of the legislative session of that same year, which this year was in June. So let's say you were a college student and you were eligible for college student financial aid through our program, and you were deciding in April where you were going to go to college that August, and you were eligible for one of the college student financial aid programs that we have. You don't know if the legislature was going to fund that amount. You don't know if it's going to be prorated in the year. You don't know if 9 months from that date in January, the legislature will make a deficit appropriation to fill the amount, and you don't know any of that. So what I hope we can do if we can get this bill passed and on the books is we can, for the first time, since we're doing something new, get it right the first time, is fund 2 years in advance one time and get ahead. And you can know that next year when you're in a situation, the legislature back in 2021 funded this program and that money's in the bank. And then you bite the bullet, you fund the program twice the first year, and every year thereafter it's just 1 year, whatever it is, whatever we can appropriate. But you would know in the spring of say you're a college senior, you would know in the spring that that money is in the bank and you'd be eligible. And it means biting the bullet and funding 2 years at once the first year, then funding it 1 year at a time thereafter. But I think it's a small percentage of people who can write a check to go to college and not graduate with debt. I think most college students, because of the cost of college in Mississippi, which is increasing, because of incomes which are decreasing, most people graduate with debt, and that's going to be people who are eligible.
Any further questions for Senator Blunt? Good. All right.
Again, this bill is double referred to the Appropriations Committee. The amounts in here, as I said, we'll back into those amounts as we see what money's available. And I hope we can, as I said, I hope we can do it twice, the first year being with one-time money, people buying a lot of lottery tickets or whatever it may be, and then work the appropriations process each year. If there are no further questions, Mr. Chairman, I move title sufficient to pass committee sub on Senate Bill 2305.
All right, you heard the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The ayes have it. The bill will be reported to Senator Hobson in appropriations. Next up on the agenda is Senate Bill 2307, and I'll recognize Senator Boyd.
Thank you. The first thing I want to do is thank the Department of Education. Particularly, I want to thank Robin Lamotis, who is the Director of Special Education in the Department of Education. She helped us do a tremendous amount of work on this. This is a bill that was brought to us by a number of constituents across the state in a number of different districts. There's a companion bill filed in the House, Representative Deweese and I working with a number of people, because there seemed to be an issue with how that children are working on dyslexia. Just a brief background on dyslexia. I know this body did a tremendous amount of work on dyslexia a number of years ago. Some of you have some of the schools in your district. I think Senator Johnson does. But dyslexia is a common condition that makes it hard to read, and it's estimated that the population has usually about 10%, it can be 10 and 15% is what the population is estimated to be within our schools. Children who have dyslexia per federal law are to be evaluated for an IEP, and if they don't qualify for an IEP, they can usually can receive accommodations under the 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. And those accommodations allow children to have longer to take tests, do various different things. Some of our school districts across the state have, and even in a call with the Lieutenant Governor with one of the parent organizations, there's been calls kind of across the state that parents say, my school district is telling me that we don't recognize dyslexia as a disability. And so this is kind of a misperception because federal law does allow this and does require this. But so we started looking back at our statutes and what we had. And so what we've done is a little bit of a cleanup, is what I'm gonna call it. When y'all did the work that you did on dyslexia, putting screeners in place for first graders and allowing this, we had a section in there that dealt with kind of the general population, but it was actually under a section that had to do with the dyslexia school. So what we've done is we've gone back and modified this code section a little bit, and we've given this its own separate statute in here. So what we've done is we took it out of section 37-173-9, out of the back sections there, and then we created a new code section over here of 37-173-16. This language right here, what it does is it mirrors federal law. That if someone has dyslexia or has somebody who's been diagnosed with dyslexia, they can go into their school district, request an evaluation for an IEP. If they don't qualify for an IEP, therefore they can get an evaluation for a 504. And I can get into the weeds on this, but I won't do that unless y'all have some particular questions. So I'll yield for questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Boyd. I know you put a lot of work into this, so I appreciate you doing that. So one of the questions I think needs to be answered is, why is this needed? Why does not state law already mandate this, and do we not have enough on the books to allow for something like this?
Well, so I'm glad you asked that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what we are seeing across the state is kind of I'm going to say maybe a misinterpretation by school districts on the situation. We are having lots and lots of phone calls. We actually, the Department of Education was visited by OSEP and asked a number of questions on what we did with dyslexia. Those questions we've answered with this bill right here, and making sure that our law is very clear and mirrors federal law on this. And also, too, we have had the first kind of piece of litigation filed, I believe I was told by the department like the first week of December, with somebody objecting to school districts who did not evaluate for their child for, I believe it was a 504. As they're required to do by federal law. So what this does is, I think it's going to prevent a good bit of litigation with parents calling out there. Just this morning, I had a constituent of Senator Michelle and Representative Ford's call me on the same very issue that was being misinterpreted by the school district. So we believe this places us clearly, directly with federal law on this, and we believe will help prevent a lot of litigation and put some clarity to school districts where we might have had some confusion in the way that we had codified this.
And is this going to create a greater burden on our districts and
School
costing
district-
more money than is already being spent?
That's a good question. School districts are already required to do this by federal law, and I actually have a handout that kind of goes through, if anybody wants it, the disability categories under IDEA, and points out that dyslexia is a category is under specific learning disability, and so there's some confusion with districts on that. So I have, anyway, if anybody wants it, wants a handout on that, I have a handout just to kind of articulate that out for you. So dyslexia falls under the 13 categories of IDEA. Dyslexia is under specific learning disability. In that category, you also see dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, auditory processing disorders, and like disorders. And interestingly enough, that is the category that a significant portion of IEPs are written under. But there's a little bit of confusion as to what that category is. So by cleaning up this code section, we've aligned ourselves complete with federal law, and school districts are already required to do this anyway by federal law under IDEA.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Boyd. Any questions for Senator Boyd? Senator Hill?
We've been needing to get this done for a long time, but I have a question. Why did we mention on line 64, interventions and strategies developed shall include but not be limited to the use of the 3-tier instructional model? Where did that come from?
That was actually included in that prior section with code, but we worked with the department on this and feel like this is really appropriate. If a child doesn't have an IEP, typically, even if they have a 504, they can be in that 3-tier instructional model. And so this is just placing that consistent with practices on that.
That was my point. If they're falling behind or having problems, they're probably going to be in that 3-tier model anyway, if they're at risk. Just my experience with that, I wasn't real thrilled with it, but I like your bill.
Okay. This just provides, again, greater clarity on school districts about if they are in that 3-tiered model, that they can continue in that process. So this is meant to clean up any problems, and I cannot thank the department enough in working with us to kind of clear up these issues.
Any other questions for Senator Boyd? Senator Boyd, do you have a motion?
Title sufficient to pass committee sub.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We are going to pass on Senate Bill 2527 right now. We'll take that up at a later date. But I want to let the committee know that we have 4 nominations to the committee. 2 of them I've already received the peer background checks, and that would be for Dr. McGehee and Ms. Kimberly Remack. They are appointed by the Lieutenant Governor. It's my intention not to bring those persons up to the Capitol for a meeting unless someone on the committee objects and would like to have them here. So what I would ask the committee to do is come see myself or Christie for those background checks, have a look at them, and let me know if you would prefer to have any of these people come before the committee, because otherwise I don't, with the state we're in right now, I don't want to bring them up here at this time. So just wanted to mention that. So with that, that's all we have on the agenda today. Entertain a motion to rise and report.